Hey everyone, David here, and I've got some exciting news to share. I've decided to write a book, and I've entitled it Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. The book is intended to help clarify the fact that psychological safety cannot be achieved without paying attention to the psychosocial hazards people are being exposed to. Despite how much individuals might be interested in treating others with kindness, dignity, and respect, many cultures are so full of psychosocial traps that no psychological health and safety effort can ultimately succeed. But to address psychosocial hazards, you first have to know what they are, and you have to have some idea what to do to address them. Though the book won't be 100% complete until the spring of 2025, I'd like to share a unique opportunity to reserve a copy during the book presale campaign. The campaign will run from September 16th to October 18th, 2024. This will be an opportunity to get one of the first copies of the book, tickets to the book launch event, and other opportunities to learn more about psychosocial hazards. For more information, you can go to my personal LinkedIn or Facebook page, or the LinkedIn, Facebook, or webpage for ID2 Solutions. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Now, back to this episode of the podcast. Some organizations can become so saturated with psychosocial hazards that the culture itself can become toxic. While we'd love to see every organization improve, some may not. We'll talk with the survivor of a toxic work culture about the experience of survival and recovery. Up next on this episode of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Well, welcome to this week's Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So, a toxic work culture is an organizational environment that is characterized by negativity, dysfunction, and a lack of trust. It can harm employees, preventing them from being productive and growing professionally. So, some of the signs of a toxic work culture include, but aren't limited to, management's expectation that employees work longer hours without additional pay, failing to listen to employees or lack of accountability. The organization may have unfair practices like biased promotions or rewards, or tacitly rewarding unethical or harmful behavior. There may be poor communication, limited communication, no communication at all, lack of healthy boundaries. Employees may experience bullying, harassment, discrimination, micromanagement, and favoritism. They may also gossip, create drama, and take credit for the work of others. And I could go on, but I won't, because there are many of us, and I include myself in this uh, in this podcast. Actually, is many of us have experienced toxic work cultures, and I have to say, the first time I experienced one, I really didn't know what it was, and frankly, I thought, well, what's wrong with me? When I experience it again, I go, well, why do I keep finding myself in these situations? And ultimately, I discovered that it was never really about me. It was about the organization itself, the group itself, the company, whether it be for profit, nonprofit. It happens in all kinds of organizations, but it's about the culture itself. But I've also found that there is something brighter on the other side. And I find it nice to be able to confront. I get these ideas in my head sometimes, and I think, maybe I've just figured it out. But thankfully, I'm not the only person who's figured that out. But there are others who have had these experiences of being in toxic work cultures and they've come out the other side. And some are actually willing to share. And have the pleasure in this episode to talk to someone who's going to do some sharing about the experience of being in that type of culture and what is actually on the other side. And I hear that's actually pretty nice. So let's get started the way that I often do with an introduction of my guest by my guest, in this case with this question. So, who is Julie Nixon?
Hey there, that's me, and I'm Julie Nixon, and I will say that I am a mom, a worker, a social worker, and a fellow traveler. What people make of that is up to them, but I will further add that I am a survivor. I am my parents' child, as are we all, and so I have survived toxic workplaces, sometimes not even knowing it was toxic until I left.
Okay, and we're gonna get into a little bit about that experience. One other rather standard question I ask people when they come on the podcast is: so, what does psychological health and safety mean to you? When you hear that, what is that? What do you think of when you hear that?
I think of a calm neurological system because we are in a safe environment. Now, that is a circular answer. I will fix it. Um, when our minds are calm, when we are not overworked, when we do not have to second guess the environment that we're in, and when we feel as though we are secure in our work positions and are able to support our families, our neurological systems are calm. And when we are neurologically calm, a lot of the inflammation that causes a lot of the chronic diseases that we see and experience go away. So, to me, psychological health and safety has to do with being in a place that allows us to be calm, centered, and balanced enough that we have the ability to work in the rest of our lives. And it helps us to stave off some of the illnesses, mental and physical, that we experience, unfortunately, on a day to day basis.
I have to say, that is a rather unique approach because, in terms of your description, because not, I haven't had a lot of folks make the, I've got some people who do research in this specific topic, just make that simple connection between an environment that can help you be calm on the one hand, also produces this wonderful, these kind of physical benefits on the other. Because I had someone, as a matter of fact, recently introduced me as a psychologist or an organizational psychologist. I'm none of those. I'm a occupational health and safety guy. I know enough about psychology to make me dangerous, but some of this is really just kind of commonsensical stuff that if the environment around me is calm and peaceful and safe for me, then I don't get sick as often. it's it's good to hear that I'm not, again, not alone. Didn't just grab that out of the sky someplace. That there's at least another person on the planet who agrees that calm environment equals healthier me.
Sure does. And don't we all know enough psychology to be dangerous, hopefully?
right, right, absolutely. So you mentioned that you were involved in social work in some way, shape, or form. So tell me a little bit about that thing, the involvement in social work.
I Graduated from the University of Connecticut School of Social Work many years ago. And I have been a professional social worker for 16 years now with my degree. As I am the single parent of twins, one of whom had significant developmental delays as a child, I had to step away from working directly in the field in social work so that I could make more money to support my family. However, the principles that I learned and the practices that I learned have followed me throughout my career. When I was doing direct care social work, I was a home visiting social worker in contracted child protective services work, along with SACS work, which is sexual assault crisis services work, and domestic violence work.
Wow. Uh, that's a lot. That's a lot. Because when we talk about psychosocial hazards, they are factors that are perceived or experienced by the person exposed to them as a threat that cause them to behave in a particular way. And one of the documented psychosocial hazards is duty to care for other people. So just the responsibility of someone calls you to or ask you to go out to a the home or the residence, wherever that might be. That's a whole nother conversation about where that might be, to somehow either intervene, provide services, or have conversations with people that have their own set of things going on becomes a set of things for you. Just that ongoing responsibility. And I spent a number of decades in the fire rescue service, and so similar kind of, you get called out to help other people. But I find in a lot of these helping professions that the profession spends so much time teaching you how to help others, but not near enough time teaching you how to help yourself. And in some cases, they become a little dysfunctional along the way as well. They, and I'm not saying that it's even intentional. Sometimes the director, who is a social worker, has seen so many things over the course of their career that they've not processed, and they turn around and they traumatize other people. Again, they think they're just doing the job, but we've all got limitations. We've all got limitations, and we've all got other responsibilities, like twins at home, that are a little bit more important, and really are literally more important than that other thing. So, wow, that's yeah. Sometimes I hear things like that, and I have to stop and kind of think, like, wow, wow. Yeah, that's almost a lot to process in and of itself.
I actually give you a lot of credit for the fire safety work, the fire and sa- because as a first responder, my sister was an EMT for many years, and so I realized the danger that you put yourself in every single day when you did that kind of work. And a lot of people don't think about it, but it's called secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, and there's very little, that's not what this is about, but there's very little support to process what we just witnessed. We have to go on to the next call. And that is very stressful. We internalize that in ways that we don't even realize. Sometimes it comes out as, um, what do they call that? First responder dark humor. Um, and other times it comes out, the numbers are mostly for police officers, but other times it comes out in intimate partner violence. That's not what we're talking about today, but it is
No,
it is a
that
lot.
is that is exactly what we're talking about today, because all of those things are products of a system that was set up by human beings who didn't consider how the work was going to affect other people. They, again, the city of or the county of decides, oh, we need this service. We've got funding from wherever to go out and take care of other people. And they get so focused on that that they skip over the people who are delivering. I used to tell folks, you know, I I don't think we help anybody if I'm riding on a fire truck and it gets into a wreck on the way to somebody else's house on fire. House is still burning. And now we've got another problem to deal with. But I apply that, thanks for the compliments, but I honestly think that this is all of the helping kinds of careers, and they all do it. They skip over the people, or they do it too often. I think some are starting to get it right, but you can't be better to your organization can't be better to your customers when you're not good to the people who are actually doing the work. You don't really know how. You practice. These are the people that you see every day, the people you're in the office with every day. And if there is ism, sexism, racism, discrimination, bullying, harassment going on in that group, how can you skip over them and go to the general public and somehow, or the customer, and treat them any better? Because if I have an issue, if I'm misogynist, I'm probably misogynist with our female customers as well. If I'm racist, all the customers like that, I'm probably going to treat them the same way. If I'm anti-Semitic, what pick it? I'm going to be that same way with the people we're supposedly providing service for. So, this is all certainly connected. It is. It is.
I agree 100%. And I like to say that, well, it's not my saying. I believe that it was the Dalai Lama who said that the ocean is contained in a drop of water. So every interaction at an organizational level that we see through the employees of that organization tell what the ocean is. No. If so, uh, for the folks who are listening for some lived experience, right? The last place that I worked was is still an education consulting and technology company, and their consultants go out to school districts. Their social mission was to improve education quality and eliminate the gaps in achievement for Black and Brown children. Um, However, I was the only US born Black person who I believe has ever been in their corporate side when I worked there. For I want to say 99% of the time that I was there, I was the only, what some people call ADOS Black person there. And the things that I saw makes it clear that the interactions that I was having spilled over into the classrooms and the school districts. And the stories that I heard from other people made it clear that that was the case. Um, Sometimes we don't know it. And I'm older now, so I can see it. But watching people's behaviors at a call, in a home visit, on a phone call, in a Zoom interview can tell a lot about what that organization is like if our nervous system is calm enough to receive it. So I try to wrap all the stuff around to the same thing. Every interaction that we have shows something about us in ways that we don't even know. I'll give one other analogy, then I'll stop talking. You've held Play-Doh, right? So when you take Play-Doh, you have it in your hand, and then you close your hand. The amount of Play-Doh that was there is still there. So what happens? It squeezes out. So someone's isms, an organization's isms, their dysfunction, the toxicity Even if their fist is closed and they're trying to hide it, it squeezes out. If we can see that that's what's happening.
Oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, you make me think of a couple of oh, sayings. Basically, I'm not sure who said them. Everything in you got to come out is one of them. Uh, and and what pressure does. And this is kind of my another really experience of mine. I find that when you're under pressure, you become more of what you already are. Uh, if you are if you are centered and calm and and trained and prepared, you just it's like you just get more focus. It's like they say in sports, the game slows down because you're so good at it. But if you're not, you get frantic and you move faster and you do a lot of irrelevant things because you don't really know where to put all that energy. But again, pressure just makes organizations and people more of what they already were. And if it's in there, it will come out. And the last little saying that I heard from someone is that we can only give to others out of our abundance. So whatever we have extra of, that's what's going to be flowing out onto other people. So, and some people are so full of trauma themselves from all kind that's what spills out onto other people because they've not dealt with their own issues, trauma, their pain, their hurt, their mistreatment, the person who discriminated against them, the person who bullied them when they were in elementary school, or whatever it is. They've never dealt with it, and it just kind of spills out onto other people because that's what's in them, and it comes out. And when those types of people design systems, they design systems with those same biases in mind because they're looking for, well, we've got to have a rule because somebody's going to hurt us, somebody's going to steal. There's bad people out there. They're going to get us. Well, who'd you hire was bad? Where in the application did you say the most horrible people in the world come work here? Nobody does that. Nobody. We always want the best people. We want the highest people on the eligibility list or whatever. We're looking for the best candidates. So how did they all of a sudden turn bad 3 months down the road? It was not that they were bad. It was that that seed was planted in soil that wasn't going to allow that to grow. And not every seed belongs in every garden. It just doesn't. It doesn't fit there. You're trying to grow oranges and you plant them out there with watermelons or grapes. Of course they don't fit. Of course they don't fit. So share a little bit with me about um, your experience of toxic work culture.
All right. Um, I will I will lean back into my most recent work experience because it's the freshest in my mind. And also the most egregious, which is interesting in this day and age. Um, so I I have a master's degree, yay me, and am an alumnus of the Annenberg School for Communication at University of Pennsylvania. To have my daughter have health insurance for the rest of her college years, and because I wanted to work remotely, I was working as the executive assistant to the president of this particular education consulting and technology company. Um, I was there for 2 years, uh, was never given a promotion, um, wound up hiring someone because I was asked to, and that person got a promotion in 3.5 months. I created that company had been in existence for about 20 years before I got there. I created the first company-wide calendar that that particular institution ever had, helped institute a few other procedural things, and for a year while I was there, I was the only administrative support person in the entire company. There were about 100 employees at the time, including contractors. When another executive assistant was hired, that person was hired for the CEO of the company. This young lady was not fluent in English. She was on a visa um, from Europe and needed significant coaching to get to the level where she could provide executive assistance. So I was asked to help her get up to snuff and was not given any compensation, was not given any title or credit. And no one quite told this young lady, because everyone at that place seemed younger than me, um, that she was supposed to be taking direction from me. So it was a lot of go on with you. What do you know? And so I learned to let people do what they were going to do. And when things felt flat, they would come back to me to fix things without additional compensation. I was surprised at how obvious the favoritism was. I was surprised at how this company had put forth a social mission, but under the covers, nothing like that was happening at all. It was a cash grab. And I felt dumb for believing that the social mission was real. Um, I did not enjoy feeling dumb. I've worked really hard to be good at what I do and to always present professionally. I'll give one other example from that job. I didn't have a credit card, like personally. I used debit cards, didn't have a credit card. We would have quarterly meetings because I worked remotely, but we would go to the headquarters or where the CEO lived because there were two different places quarterly. And I would do, as the only administrative support person in the company, all of the logistics for people's travel, the meals, all of that stuff, the background stuff. So we had to order meals. Oh, where's the company card? Oh, we don't have one for you. Oh, okay. So I had to go and apply for a personal credit card and hold upwards of about $1,800 worth of meals and travel to be reimbursed later. What I found out after the other executive assistant came on board, we met for one of the quarterly meetings, and she's like, "Oh, well, let's use my card." "What card?" "Oh, my company card." "What company card? What are you talking about?" "Oh, yeah, I got that 2 weeks after I started." There are several other examples like that. And then little gotcha situations, which I think a lot of people who are in toxic work environments, there is, I liken it to child neglect just because of the social work aspect. So, on the surface, child neglect can look like it's not abuse because the parent isn't like hitting the child or starving the child, right? But child neglect and a toxic work environment are similar because on the surface, everything looks okay. But when you look underneath, There is a level of micro intense management over supervision, but also a lack of providing infrastructure and support. That is what I experienced in that position. And I feel it was the most egregious because there were no checks or balances. I had previously worked in higher education, nonprofit, and state government environments. All of those things have checks and balances in place so that when things go off the rails, there's either a union or there's a grievance process. There was none of that in this particular company. And so things just ran how they ran.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the FlourishDX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. Uh, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and and even while I'm saying that, I'm also hearing this kind of other voice of folks who might say, "Well, at least at least you weren't sexually harassed, or at least you weren't. Uh, they didn't steal anything from you, or at least." And see, that is really the difference when I talk about psychosocial hazards. It has to do with the experience of the person exposed to that behavior. Because and it, that is really the bottom line, because how it feels to you and how it feels to somebody else could be totally different. I honestly believe there are people who'd explain that away. Oh, that's okay. And they'll start making excuses for it too. At least what I think. That kind of justify it. Well, those kind of things happen. It's you know, and again, I try not to say that and not be overly judgmental of that's the way they see it, but I'm really concerned about the fact that you don't see that it affects somebody else. That's really the issue. And again, to that company, they thought that's the way we do stuff around here. I mean, that's just the way it is. How come you can't adapt to that? Well, I'm not going to adapt to that because that feels threatening and harmful to me. That feels unfair to me. That is not enjoyable to me. And if you wanted a different kind of person, you probably should have hired a different kind of person because it doesn't work for this person. And that's the other thing that you actually you mentioned before, how you were in a situation where you're the first, the few, or the only. The first, the few, and the only experience a lot of psychosocial hazards that nobody else does because they're the first, the few, and the only. Of course, it works for all of you because y'all made it safe for you. Just didn't make it safe for me. And when I bring it up, instead of addressing my safety concern, you tell me to conform. You tell me to get used to it. And I'm finding that, and frankly, thank God that there are people of all generations. I used to just think it was just really young people. Uh, I'm not the youngest person in the world, and I don't feel that way. The deal is like, no, that just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. It's never going to work for me. So we've got a couple of choices. We can try to find a way to deal with this, or I can find something else to do. That's it. I mean, yeah, and now it honestly it took. I'm not sure about you, but I know for me it took therapy to get to the point to where I can say that and not be angry with the way that I was treated in some of these situations. And over the course of time, and kind of like getting to the point to where I can calm myself and not be angry, because that's not going to change it either. My anger, and matter of fact, that'll probably just make it worse because I already weren't concerned about my safety. And when I lash out, it gets worse. So, uh, wow. And the other thing that uh, is relatable to me is I've been in a committed relationship with an administrative professional for the last 37 years. And yeah, that's really, it's the work she enjoys, and is fortunately in a situation now where, you know, she left a kind of a toxic situation and got into one that is none of, I don't believe that there is a perfect job out there, but they're not all toxic. They're not all toxic. So, um, how have you? Because you. So again, you come across to me, and this is literally the first time we've met in any way, shape, or form. So I don't have anything to go on other than what I see. But you come across right now as very almost Zen calm. It- that's that's the energy and the vibe that you give. I just said it's very. So how does how does one get from those kinds of experiences to being able to carry yourself every day and be like, it's all good?
There are a few ways. I'm going to address what you said about therapy. I am ever thankful to have done rounds of therapy. It's not one round, it's not two. You know, you go as needed and as insurance allows, you know. Um, that's one. Two, I'm not in a toxic work environment right now. So my nervous system is nice and calm. That's two. Three, um, I make this sound like I'm trauma dumping and I'm not. It's just lived experience is what it is. Um, Back in 2018, I was still working for the state of South Carolina. There, I have a scar right here, um, because I was working for a state agency running logistics for meetings. I went to get something out of my car before a particular meeting, and colloquial Southern colloquialism, I fell out. I am very tall. I am about I'm about 6 feet tall, and I had on 3.5, 3-inch heels, whatever, whatever, right? So it's the Jolly Green Giant falling down at this point. Anyway, I scraped up face, tooth went through lip, right? They rushed me to the hospital, which was around the corner from work. I would have preferred they didn't, but long story shortened, I was diagnosed with something called pulmonary hypertension back in 2018. It is very rare. There is no cure. I was given a prognosis of 7 years. Come November, we are coming up on year 6. I should be on oxygen at this point, right? I was determined because there is no cure. No matter, no, the medicines are very expensive, all of that. I say that to say I went on a crusade to find out how to heal myself. So, most of this year, I have been doing that. One of the things that I learned, because I've been doing some healing modalities and got certified in them and all of that. Um, when I get upset, like rip snortingly, like really angry and upset, my symptoms come back. So I'm not Zen calm just because I don't have I'm not in a toxic work environment. It's to save my own life. But that's just for me. Now, facetiously, and also not, um, some people like heavy metal. Some people like my daughter likes something called screamo, which is heavy metal plus screaming. I'm from Connecticut, and so New York rap, like that 90s New York rap, Onyx, Wu-Tang, Busta. So when I'm very much upset, I channel my feelings through whatever I'm listening to, and it helps me release that. So, yeah, Calm and Zen and Love and Light and Method Man.
Right, 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 right,
Red
right,
Man and
right.
some Timberland boots. So
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's that's very helpful. That's very helpful. I understand that the third law of thermodynamics is that energy cannot be created or destroyed; it simply changes form. And I am of the belief that a lot of uh, the energy that comes from these, what we would describe as toxic environments, because there are there are environments that are toxic because the air is filled with particulate or filled with a chemical, or uh, the temperature is too high or too low, or and these are all kind of physical things that we've found ways to be able to measure, but we don't do the best job of measuring the unmeasurable, which is the psychological. It's hard to measure it, but you can feel it, and the energy that comes from those environments that don't feel good to you, that energy has to be processed somewhere. It does. And I honestly believe that that's things, music and exercise and meditation, and pick your thing. I mean, there's a whole industry out there around solutions. What there doesn't tend to be as much of is conversation about how to prevent it in the first place. So let me go back to the experience that you had. If you had an organization who had anyone who understood the what it really takes to create a psychologically healthy and safe culture, and realized that the way that you hire and onboard people and compensate people and promote or not people and assign or not people, all of those, though they may sound like HR things, are actually safety things as well. Because when I look at, there's a gentleman by the name of David Rock who came up with what's called the SCARF model, that talks about our brains being activated or not by the impact on our status, and how consistent things are, and how much autonomy I have, and how related this I am to this thing, and um, those, and how fair the environment seems. All of these, our brain only sees things as threats or rewards. Period. There's no gray area. It's either a threat or reward. Period. It just is. And there are many things in the environment that are threatening to people, but the organization just says, it's okay for me. Doesn't really matter how it affects them, until maybe they do something wrong or don't perform in a certain way. And then rather than addressing the issue, then it's your fault. It's your fault that you complained about not getting promoted. It's your fault that you complain about being assigned duties that weren't in my job description. Oh, by the way, I don't even have a job description. And I find that, a lot of these toxic organizations, they really thrive on no rules at all. So they can just do whatever they want and affect people however they want. And it's horrible for some people. It, it, it is. It is. So if you were, let's say you were giving a little bit of consulting advice to an organization that says, look, we don't want to do that. We don't want to have people feeling the way that Julie felt in that environment. What are some things that you could share with them? Just one or two things that you could share. You should probably think about and then fill in the blank.
first, one, maybe the only one, is that they should probably think about listening to their employees. There are plenty of organizations that ask for employee feedback, and not all employees give truthful feedback. Sometimes people will run the party line because they don't want to rock the boat. But there are people who give harsh, what they think of as harsh, yet truthful feedback. Listen to the outliers. They're even if you feel it's harsh or that it's a troublemaker or whatever you want to label them, there's truth in what they're saying. Now, listen to your employees also means that if there are people who are not willing to give feedback, no answer is your answer. The culture that you have created clearly feels unsafe to the point where people don't even want to participate anymore and give feedback because they're not being listened to. Um, so, my one thing for an organization is to listen to their employees because they're telling you what they need.
Okay. How about to that individual who is in a situation that I'll give it to you the two ways. That person that's in a situation similar to yours, or if you could talk to your younger self about what you were going through, what would you say to either of those people?
I will pick the person who is going through a situation similar to mine, um, which is talking to myself, my younger self, obviously. Um, you are a full and complete person outside of what is happening in your job. You have valuable skills and abilities that might not be recognized in the environment you're in right now. You're not a tree. Dust that resume off and let's go. Last thing I will say is that you bring so much to an organization that some of the behavior that you see is a sign that people feel threatened by your competence, which is also an indicator that you're not in the right environment. Use your support system and find what is a better environment for you. And there are ways to do that, obviously. I give people pep talks all the time, and when I'm giving them pep talks, I'm giving myself a pep talk as well. We and maybe your other guests also feel this way, maybe you also feel this way, that we've never gone back to a situation that is as bad as the one that we experienced. We continually walk up the staircase of achievement or safety while also walking down the staircase of toxicity. So even though we might be in a not great place right now, we're never going to be in that place again.
Oh boy, that's kind of one of those mic droppers. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for sharing not only your experience but some of your thoughts about uh, what a future could be. You know, some kind of little hints. Hopefully, folks have picked up. As I said, I try my best when we have these conversations about psychological health and safety to not always have the kind of clinical, so again, get some other person with with a lot of a psychiatrist, psychologist, someone with a lot of depth on the mental health side to talk. All those things are important. They really are. But every now and then, it's really important just to have conversations with kind of normal people who've had experiences like a lot of other, again, your experience sounds so familiar, so very familiar. And I personally have not only known people, but I know some people right now who stayed because it was so familiar. It didn't work. It wasn't good for them. It was toxic, but they've now stayed so long that they're damaged. And I'm not sure in some cases if they can even, I think they can recover, but it's going to take an awful lot. It really, because they stayed in it. So we're talking 5, 10, 15, 20 years of this over and being disrespected and mistreated and kicked to the side and discriminated against and harassed and bullied and just day after week after month after year. And they just continue to tell themselves, well, I have to stay because. And, I don't understand it. I certainly respect the folks feeling that way, but it can be better. It can be better. It can be better. Your example is one that it can be better, and that there are things that you can do yourself, and some of these things you have to do yourself to be able to recover. So, Julie, thanks again. Thanks very much. So wonderful, so wonderful. Like I said, um, I you're literally one of the more Zen people that I got to tell you. I'm not sure what you, but it's just like, so keep that up, whatever that is. It's just it's a thing. It's a thing.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels. Plus, therapy really helps. I'm just going to say that. And honestly, I have a lot of friends who are still in toxic situations in different ways, and they're all sick. But they think that that is part of the aging process and that's part of life. They also have a feeling that suffering is part of life. We weren't put on this planet to suffer this way. There are better things, but sometimes we have to step out on faith to get to those better things. So I thank you for the compliment, because it's like, oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, it's a thing. There's the work has paid off. It has. The work has paid off. So I'd encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. keep doing what you're doing. So thanks very much. And so for those who've been watching and listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope something that you've heard will bring you back in the future. Previous episodes of the podcast can be found at Psych, Health, and Safety USA.com. You can watch, like, subscribe, and share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do join the Psych, Health, and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. So until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.